I've played over 100 hours in Pokemon Legends ZA's version of Lumiose City, and I tried to hold out on commentating on this until I had finished the main story, but that just means there's a lot to go over here. So I will start by saying that I played on Switch 2, and any of the performance issues that I've seen, I did not encounter. Thank God. So, story-wise, I feel like there's almost none up front, but the whole thing is sort of framed as a mystery, so I'll just let that go for right now. Gameplay-wise, it's very different and feels like a step in a whole new direction, and so as a whole, it's, in my opinion, a 7 out of 10 game with a 9 out of 10 potential. Now, I will be getting into spoilers in this video, so if you don't want to hear that, go ahead and skip to this timestamp somewhere up here or something like that. So, the story. So the whole story of ZA is essentially a vacationer cleans up a 3,000-year-old man's mess. Quick refresher, eons ago, AZ created the ultimate weapon to get revenge for his Pokemon dying at war. This ultimate weapon caused a lot of devastation and continues to affect the area of Lumiose City, up to apparently 5 years after the events of X and Y. Speaking of X and Y, Lysander, the Team Flare executive guy, found AZ in the past, and he imprisoned him to get info to be able to use this ultimate weapon in order to cleanse the world, essentially. It sounds a little, let's just say extreme. But it's fine. He got his ass kicked by like a 12-year-old or something like that. And the 12-year-old saved the world, and you've played X and Y, right? Alright. 5 years later, your character shows up to Lumiose City on vacation and gets recruited into a security detail that protects the city from rogue mega Pokemon. I'll get into that in a second. So the story evolves into you becoming part of a friend group with specialized skills like sewing, dancing. Yours just happens to be battling. So the characters feel fine, but have definitely a lot more presence than in some of the previous games where they just feel like a hurdle or an obstacle to get over. So I will say that, lack of voice acting aside, the dialogue was kind of refreshing and new, and genuinely was a bit more funny than the usual jokes. In the first act of the story, AZ states that he's looking for the strongest Mega Evolution user in town, and fighting rogue Mega Evolved Pokemon turns out to be the reasoning. Old characters make a return in this game, and not in the worst way. You learn early on that Mabel from Team Flare is basically the city's professor. She's tasked with Pokemon research and is essentially on house arrest. AZ is still kicking and watching over the city, just waiting on something bad to happen. And Lysander is somehow still alive after all that. Supposedly he got saved by Zygarde, but he's lost most of his memory of his time in Team Flare. Looker and Volo are also referenced, but not featured. So the gameplay with the new real-time battle system was solid. I enjoyed the speed stat being in control of your cooldowns, and not really even having to worry about getting hit sometimes if you had a fast enough Pokemon. I will always like turn-based Pokemon games mechanics a little bit better, but it was genuinely pretty interesting and fun to learn. That's a lot of glaze for a game that's been getting basically non-stop hate though, right? Well, how about we focus on a couple of negatives then? First off, the lack of voice acting, even with this much personality in every Pokemon game, is just gonna be a problem for modern games. It just is. But that aside, the fact that it's a children's game probably adds to this, but most of the characters felt a little flat except for maybe 3 of the main characters. Now, the graphic style is fine, but being that it's a Switch 2, the newest console version of a game that the studio and parent company has had over 25 years to try and develop and get right, is just
also crazy. This guy's
a little lackluster. The fact that they chose a texture instead of modeling out the buildings is not the biggest deal in the world, but it does add to the overall jank and children's game feeling of everything. But all I was ever really concerned with is that the models of the Pokemon look great. They have a lot of personality, they move around a lot, they have different idle animations for different things, and that's really all I cared about coming into another new 3D Pokemon game. However, the Pokemon do seem to lag behind you whenever you run a little too fast for them. That's just kind of something that's always been a thing and definitely could be fixed. I know there's Pokemon who are genuinely much faster than a human could ever even consider being. They still end up teleporting close to you whenever you need them. So again, it's not the biggest deal. Another thing you could consider either a positive or a negative, depending on how you're looking at it, is the fact that the game was coded the way it was opened up lots of room for people to exploit the mechanics, and regardless of the studio, that's kind of crazy for a $70 game. And I know tons of you are getting way more shiny Pokemon than you could have ever dreamed of, which is pissing off a lot of the shiny hunting full odds purists out there. Speaking of shiny hunting, the game seems to save something like the 10 most recent shinies that have spawned into your game, and it doesn't let them despawn unless you either knock them out and run away or just fully ignore their presence for a long time, or they run from you. There's also a higher chance of being able to catch these found shinies, making them harder to fail, which is kind of cool if you just sort of stumble upon one during your playthrough, which can happen. On the note of rare Pokemon, the fact that the Mega Stones for Kalos starters is locked behind online, it's not the worst thing in the world, but I do understand if you don't already have a Nintendo Online account, it really does suck having to fork out about $100 just to get the full experience, if you're including the online fees and things like that. So on with the things that there are to do in this game. There are a lot of side quests that you'll get from the Looker Bureau, but a lot of them just turn into battles, while others will actually let you access new items, new Pokemon, new areas, so they don't all feel like filler. Some of them actually take you to new parts of the map and has you exploring all of Lumio City. Speaking of Lumio City, now I'm all for unity, peace, harmony, love, all that, but how am I supposed to comfortably live in a city where a Sableye will steal my wedding ring, a Beldum will break the holovators that we use to get on the roofs of buildings, which apparently everybody tends to do in Lumio City these days, I don't know, and there's literal freaking dinosaurs walking around and sentient trash bags eating my garbage. That's crazy. But I digress. It's a Pokemon game set in a single city, and they had to figure out some way to make that work, right? It really feels like the characters in this game all kind of have some idea that something is going on in Lumio City. But AZ kind of seems to know exactly what's going on, and so does Jet, but they don't want to tell anybody. Lumio's tower is constantly under construction during this game because Lysander, setting off the ultimate weapon 5 years prior, has awakened the tower's mega energy, causing more Pokemon to flock to the city, some Pokemon to get even stronger, alpha Pokemon, or even just causing rogue mega evolution, which is crazy. This is all sort of hinted at you during the main story, but in the in-game, it's just kind of all unloaded on you at once, causing a little bit of whiplash, because the whole story seems to come together all at once, kind of explaining everything that you've been questioning for the past 20 plus hours that you've played running around Lumio City. AZ did a bad thing. About 3,000 years later, Lysander and Mabel tried to recreate the bad thing. 5 years go by, and AZ builds a team of trainers to clean up loose ends and dies. Meanwhile, Lysander, now with dementia and a 3,000-year lifespan, brings Zygarde to a vacationer who only planned on being there for a short period of time, but now they're sort of tasked with cleaning up this 3,000-year-old man's mess and protecting the city. And now, after they've protected the city from the ultimate weapon going off again, it seems like they just kind of get forced to live there and continue beating up the city folk to prove a point. The last thing that I'm going to touch on is the movement and mechanics in general. Battling, great, fun. I love the cooldown system. I like having great coverage on my Pokemon. The way that dig and moves like that function is pretty fun. I even like using U-turn to get my Greninja out of the way of harm. Awesome. The movement though, getting around the city, I understand, Game Freak, you want us to take our time exploring the city, noticing things, and it's a little slow, though. It's just a little slow, because I've spent over 180 hours in this game now, and getting around now, because I've unlocked every single fast point, isn't so bad. But it would be nice to maybe get introduced with a mount Pokemon or something like they've done in the past games. No HMs or anything like that, but maybe like I get to ride a Skiddo or something along those lines around the city just to make exploration and getting around Lumio City just this much easier. Alright, so we've briefly touched on almost all aspects of this game, but to me, here's the important part. Game Freak tried something sort of new. Did they do amazing at it? No, not necessarily. But I think it'll be a big step in the right direction if they continue to make Pokemon games a lot more like the anime, where we can sort of see people in Pokemon organically interacting with each other and living in the same world. Well, that's just my 2 cents on Legend ZA, and I know I've kind of glazed over a lot here, but overall, I had a good time. And I would like to see more of a development and better story elements added to this new gameplay loop of catching and battling Pokemon in real time on the overworld and not in a little battle screen. I definitely feel like if Pokemon continues to try new things and add new mechanics and keep moving forward in the terms of how technology has progressed, I think that they could have a banger on their hands in the next couple of years, as long as they focus on quality and not just pumping out a new game like they used to. Like I said, just my 2 cents. If there's anything that you really would have liked me to talk about also or instead, go ahead and drop that down in the comments. Maybe I'll make another talking head video about this. Or maybe in the future, I'll try out the DLC and it changes the game all the way for the better. Kind of like Scarlet and Violet adding Blueberry Academy changed the entirety of that gameplay and how it feels. But again, just me. I'm just a guy. Just a dude in a Britney hoodie sitting in a quiet apartment. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and make me some lunch, and I'll see you guys next time.